one of the best multi-platform Adobe Photoshop alternatives that you don't have to install on your computer. Let's check it out. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much once again joining me for tea time. Today we're coming to the end of some fireside. Today is going to be a fiery day. We're going to be talking about an alternative to Adobe Photoshop. A lot of you guys are trying to move away from Windows, going into Linux. Some of you folks are staying with Windows, but you want to get away from Adobe. Whatever the case might be, there is alternatives out there to Adobe. And I broke free of Adobe about 5 years ago. I did an entire series called Life After Adobe, Cutting the Cord. Did really well. And now I'm starting a series that is Life After Microsoft Windows, Cutting the Cord, that's doing also really well. A lot of people are looking for those alternatives, and I've been using a package called PhotoPea. For the last 2 or 3 weeks, all of the thumbnails that you see on this channel have been done with that specific package. Now, I moved into Linux. I've been using GIMP and using Krita, as well as Affinity Photo in Linux. A lot of things I've been doing, but I've really been enjoying the PhotoPea application because you don't even have to install it on your computer. It's web-based, which is crazy. You could call it a SaaS, you call it a web app, however you want to call it, but it is in the cloud. And you just simply go to the website and you use it. And it looks just like Photoshop. And it works like Photoshop too. Well, today, instead of us talking about PhotoPea and me showing you PhotoPea, we're doing one better. We're going all the way to Prague. Well, I'm not actually traveling to Prague, but we're going to have a conversation, a chat with the developer of PhotoPea. His name is Ivan Kurtzker, and once again, he is from Prague, and he will be on in just a second. A lot of you guys out there gave me questions to ask Ivan during this chat that we're going to have, and I wrote them all down, so we're going to get to as many as we can. The video is a little bit longer because, once again, it is a hangout. It is a chat. It's probably going to be 30, 40 minutes long or something like that, but if you don't want to see the whole thing, don't. Fast forward through it. That's all right. Or you could skip ahead, or you could play us back at 2x and we sound like chipmunks, or maybe just take some Adderall. Whatever works for you guys, whatever works. But before we get into this chat, do me a favor. Throw the video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. If you have not subscribed, consider doing so. If you have, thank you. I appreciate that. Click this little button over here, the notification button, so when I go live and when a new video comes out, you'll be notified of it immediately. Also, if you want to say thank you for all of my hard work, there's a little thank you button. You could click on that, give $1 or $2 if you like. And if you haven't downloaded any of my ebooks, check them out. Go to JCristina.com/books. Once again, JCristina.com/books. They are free, just for you being here. And if you want more Linux content, breaking away from Windows, I'll put a link here. And then right after that link, I'll probably put another that will take you over to the Life After Adobe Cutting the Cord series, whichever one you want to watch. So without further ado, let's have a chat with the developer of PhotoPea. This is an interview, or more like a chat, with Ivan. Now, let me get the name right. It's Kurtzker. Is that right, Kurtzker?
Yes, Kurtzker, that's right.
Kurtzker. He is the developer, the maker, the inventor of PhotoPea, the online, some people will call it a SaaS or maybe even a web app, or however you would like to view it. It is basically a Photoshop alternative. So if you guys remember, I did an entire piece about 5 years ago, Life After Adobe, Cutting the Cord. I got the shirt for it and all the rest of the stuff, and we broke away from Adobe. And at that time, I got involved a little bit with PhotoPea. I took a look at it, and then I moved into some of these other alternatives, but we cut out Adobe altogether. And that's kind of what I see for a lot of people out there that are trying to cut away from Adobe and also break away from Microsoft. That's one of the reasons why I've been doing the whole Linux thing. So we have Ivan Kurtzker with us right now, and he is the developer of PhotoPea. So, Ivan, thank you for being here with us. I do appreciate it. We've got a bunch of questions for you today, but this isn't going to be like an interview. It's going to be more of a chat. We'll just kind of chat about PhotoPea, what it is, what it isn't, and who it is good for. This channel is always about the why, so I like to tell people the why behind everything. So let me just start out by saying, welcome. I really do appreciate you being here, and just tell everyone who you are and what exactly is PhotoPea. What is it?
So hello, thanks for inviting me. My name is Ivan Kurtzker, and I'm the creator of PhotoPea. So basically, PhotoPea is a website. If you type photopea.com into a browser, you get to a website, and it's a photo editor which runs inside a web browser. I started working on it in 2012, and I released the first version in 2013. And right now, it became quite popular. It's used by thousands of people, and it's pretty capable. I'd say it has many features which other advanced commercial software has.
Yeah, I noticed that what I really liked about PhotoPea, especially for the folks that are using Linux or if someone is breaking away from the Adobe product, is it really doesn't have that much of a learning curve to it. If you know Photoshop, when you jump into PhotoPea, it's literally, it feels almost like a clone. I mean, it literally feels like you're sitting inside of Photoshop, and all of the tools are, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of the tools are still in the same place. The UI, the GUI, right? The graphical user interface is very, let's say, appealing to the folks that are moving from Photoshop to PhotoPea, because it's very easy. Whereas sometimes when you use other software that is a replacement, let's say, of Photoshop, is a little bit more difficult because now you're having to learn where things are and what certain tools do. Was that one of the things that you were thinking of when you came up with PhotoPea, to make it very easy to get involved with for people that are moving over from, let's say, Photoshop or something similar?
Well, originally PhotoPea was not supposed to be a photo editing software.
Wow.
Yeah, originally I've been working with Photoshop for a long time, and I knew it quite well. And originally I just wanted to make a web app which will let you render the Photoshop file. So you would just drag and drop a PSD file into a browser, and you can see what's inside, like how many layers are there, how you can like turn on and off each layer, but you would not be able to create anything or to save your work. This was not an idea. So just like a viewer of Photoshop files, right? Because back then, 12 years ago, there was no software which could let you render the Photoshop file other than Adobe Photoshop. So that was my initial idea. And I gradually started to add some editing features like moving layers or exporting a JPEG or PNG. So it started to become an editor very slowly, gradually. And when I was thinking about how should this tool be called, or how should this button be called, it was easy to name it the same way as Photoshop. So that's correct. The interface is very similar to Adobe Photoshop, and I think that's actually an advantage, that if you decide to switch from one software to another, it becomes much easier when the things are named the same way or are located at the same spot on the screen. So yeah, and
so that was one of the things that I really liked about PhotoPea, is just like you said, the idea of just taking a PSD file, for example, from Photoshop and just dragging it into PhotoPea and it just pops up is really neat to be able to do it, and then just go layer by layer and make modifications, turn layers off or on or whatever. That I always thought was really interesting. And now I moved into Affinity Photo. I started using Affinity Photo on all the Affinity products. And as you know, now Affinity ended up being bought by another SaaS company, right? Canva ended up buying Serif, which is really, really interesting. And maybe we'll talk about that before the end, but more about the software itself. Let me just ask you some of the questions that I got in from you guys, from the community for Ivan, are really, really fantastic. And I know if I go through all of them, it'll just be way too long of a chat. But I know some people were talking about how, what is the biggest technical challenges do you have when you developed PhotoPea at the very beginning? I know originally you said you made it as a viewer, almost like, let's say, a Adobe Acrobat, just a viewer portion, in comparison to Pro, right? Where you're in there and you can actually do the modifications and edit it. So it's now all of a sudden went from a viewer to a full-blown editor, which is just absolutely amazing. What kind of challenges, to be able to come up with these advanced tools? And in my understanding is all of this code, these algorithms that you've written, are all your own code, right? This is a one-man show type of thing.
Yeah, so there are some advanced features in PhotoPea which are not usually present in other photo editors. So I had to figure out how it's done. And when I was doing it, I was actually studying at the university. So it was kind of related to my studies. And it was quite fun to write code and check what it does and compare it with Photoshop or with GIMP or with something else. So it was a lot of fun for me. Sometimes I thought that, I know how this works. I know what code should I write. Then I wrote it and I saw it's totally different. And instead of spending one day doing it, I ended up spending 1 month on some feature.
Wow.
So you can never know in advance how long some feature is gonna take, how much time it's gonna take. But I usually enjoyed it. So
yeah, so you almost So you almost like worked on it as a university project, let's say, and developing code on the back end and then testing it.
Yeah, I learned programming at the university, so I learned more about like algorithms and all kinds of stuff. Math is very important in such complex software. So yeah, I wanted school. My university was mostly theoretical. So we did not do much like practical programming implementation. So I was coming up with hobbies like PhotoPea and some other stuff that I did back then.
It's almost like your own lab. You worked on a project and you're kind of bringing to fruition stuff that you were learning theoretically, and you actually made it practical, which is amazing. And yes, this is all algorithm, people. This is a lot of math goes into what goes on behind the scenes of PhotoPea or any type of photo editor, video editor, any type of NLE or whatever. There's a lot of math that goes on and a lot of code that needs to be written. And when I see everything that PhotoPea does, it just amazes me because, I'm a system administrator. I'm pretty decent at math and I know what goes into this, and it's just amazing. I want to ask you about AI. I know everything is AI this and AI that. That's like the hot term that everyone talks about now is AI. Are you implementing or some of the tools going to be like AI type of based? And the reason I ask that is because my understanding, and you can kind of flesh this out a little bit, PhotoPea is working on your computer, not on a server that's in the cloud somewhere. So when you're using PhotoPea, once you get into the software itself, it is now using your processor, your memory and everything. So if you were to implement AI, how would that happen? You would, through a web app. Is that even possible?
So yeah, that's correct. PhotoPea runs completely on your device, if it's either a laptop or a phone or even some iPad. And it's pretty much the same as Photoshop or GIMP or Affinity Photo. And when you mention AI, you probably mean something like generative fill in Photoshop, where you can select some object and then say like replace it with something else, and it will replace it. But you should keep in mind that this runs in the cloud in case of Photoshop. It does not run on your computer because it requires a really powerful hardware to do it in less than 5 seconds. So it's sent to Adobe server and then the result is sent back to your computer. And actually the similar features are already available in PhotoPea. So for example, this generative fill, in PhotoPea, there's a tool called Magic Replace. and it works pretty much the same. It's called inpainting. This kind of feature is called inpainting. So you select some area in your photo, you type text which describes the new content that you want to get instead. You just press a button, and in 3-5 seconds you will get a new content. So this is already available in PhotoPea for a year, I think, or even more.
Wow. So, and that's happening off the computer. That's not happening on your computer. That's happening in the cloud. And then, so having a fast internet connection is definitely important if you're going to be using those type of features in comparison to onboard features that are in the web app itself, right?
Yeah, but it usually takes more time to process the image on the server than to send it over the network. So
right.
It's like JPEG, which has 200 kilobytes or something. So right. It's sent quite quickly, but it will not work offline, neither in PhotoPea, neither in Photoshop. You need to be online to use this kind of features.
Yeah, you need to be connected. Absolutely. Just speaking about sizes and whatnot, I tested this out last night just for my own knowledge. I ended up bringing in a raw image from a photo shoot that I did, like a headshot. I just dragged a CR2 file, which is right from a Canon camera, dragged it right into PhotoPea. It immediately understood that, hey, it's a CR2 file, right? And it brought up let's say something similar to like a Lightroom S type of thing, where you can control contrast and your different lighting, your exposure and your tint and your Kelvin and all the rest of this stuff right there. And then when you're done, which I thought was really nice, is then you can hit an open button, bring it right into PhotoPea proper, or you could just save it as a JPEG after the fact. So you're almost using it as a means to do raw editing, photo by photo, which I absolutely love. My question is, having that ability, do you have, or is it something that you would consider making it so that it has the accessibility to look at, let's say, a specific source folder, bring everything in almost like a Lightroom, and then do something similar? Just click on the image and then do your edit. Click on the image, then do your edit, and then be able to, let's say, export all, let's say, your 10 or 50 or however many pictures, almost as let's say, a Lightroom, but in the cloud. Is that, it's not really in the cloud, but I guess, yeah, as a web app, let's call it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be definitely possible, but personally, I've never worked in Lightroom myself, so
Gotcha.
I don't know exactly what it does from the user's perspective. But if I see that there is some demand for this feature, I think it is possible to add it, like batch processing
exactly.
of raw photos. So right now you can work with each photo separately, but it will be possible to make it work like Adobe Lightroom.
Yeah, so it'd be like, yeah, exactly like Lightroom, and you'd have all of your thumbnails would pop up really tiny, so you're not using a lot of processing there. And then you can just click on any one, it'll bring it up full size, and then you'll be able to do your edit to it. And then later on, batch them out. So yeah, I mean, it's something, I was just thinking about it because this is what I do. It might be something interesting to be able to have that availability in the cloud or through PhotoPea in comparison to, but there's a lot of people that want alternatives to Lightroom. And when I broke free of Adobe altogether 5 years ago, when I deleted all Adobe product and went with Affinity and went with a lot of other pieces of software, there was a lot of people that came on board and said, listen, we need like some type of Lightroom package, and there's really not this Darktable. There's like certain things out there that you can use. On one has some good, there's some things, but Lightroom was always the thing that, the de facto that everyone would use. So I was just thinking about it might be something to consider. Let me ask you, what made you decide to use or to write a web app in comparison to writing a proper app, something that would be specific to a platform, either Mac or PC or Linux or whatnot? Why did you end up going with a web app in comparison to, writing C code or something?
So actually, a long time before making PhotoPea, I already had experience with making websites. and I also made Flash games. Do you remember Flash?
Oh,
Adobe
wow.
Flash
Yeah.
Player.
Yep, I do remember.
So I used to work with this since like 2007 maybe, and I created many Flash games, and I really enjoyed the fact that you can upload it to your website, and somebody opens the website and can play your game, either no matter if they use Mac or Windows or Linux, doesn't really matter. So I really enjoyed the simplicity of creating something without having to worry about specific platform.
Yeah, that was, let me just jump in, because that is really what I thought was very, I think is really important, especially for a lot of people that are watching right now, is the idea that you are able to use PhotoPea on any platform. And when I mean any, I mean like any. It doesn't matter if it's PC, if it's Mac, if it is Linux, or if you're on your phone, or even if you're on an iPad or something. Since it is web driven, I mean, it is going to work on anything. So the code that you're writing, are you really honing it down for speed because of the limitations that you have from using a web browser in comparison to writing like C code?
Actually, the period when I decided to make PhotoPea, it coincided with the period when browsers started really to care about the performance. Google Chrome was released around 2010 or something, or even a bit earlier, and then Firefox started to improve the performance, and then Safari, and then there was Microsoft Edge, or even Internet Explorer started to become faster. So browsers really started to become faster back then, and I thought it's a great opportunity to use this performance. And so I guess right now, if I write some code for a web browser and I write the same code in a C, for example, I think the difference in speed will not be that big, because browsers are really optimized right now, and you usually can write a code which would run equally fast as if it was written in C. So yeah, if there is something slow in PhotoPea, it's probably because I could not come up with a better algorithm, or maybe there is even no better algorithm at the moment. So even if I wrote the same thing in C, it will be equally fast. It would not be like 10 times faster just because it's C.
Let me ask you, is PhotoPea able to use your hardware on a low level, or since it's going through a web browser, it has to kind of hit it on a high level? In other words, are you able to access like GPU and really, squeeze it for what it's worth, and full memory that's available to the web application that the computer has, full processing power and whatnot? Can you access all that through the web?
Yes, actually, I think in 2015, I started to use GPU acceleration in PhotoPea, and everything suddenly became a lot faster. Like I could have like 10 megapixel image with 20 layers, and you could drag each layer and it would run at 60 FPS. So the performance has really improved after switching to GPU. So that's how it works now. If you open PhotoPea either on a phone or like iPhone, Android, doesn't matter, it always uses the GPU, because this technology exists for over 10 years and it's really easy to use it now. It's supported everywhere. So yeah, I think PhotoPea uses the GPU a lot, and it runs a lot faster thanks to the GPU.
Yeah, so yeah, the GPU is everything. I mean, some people might have AMD, might have an NVIDIA card or whatever it is. Normally, if you're going to install a game, for example, it's going to say, hey, do you have the proprietary drivers to use, or so on and so forth. So for you, you're not really having to do any of that, because you're actually using whatever driver is currently working through the system is what you're using, basically, is what I would guess.
This problem is already solved by a browser, because there is like a web standard, WebGL, and every browser has to deliver this API, no matter if it runs on Mac or Windows or Linux. So all this hard work about detecting the hardware and figuring out the drivers and stuff, it's already solved by browser. So all I have to do is write the same code, and it should run the same on every device.
So it's kind of actually easier, so you can concentrate, let's say, more, right, on your code, on your algorithms, in comparison to having to deal from, you know, from one GPU to the next GPU to whatever. This way it's already done, and now you can like concentrate on what you need to concentrate on, basically making new advanced features or whatnot.
Yeah, that's exactly true. But for example, there are still some issues. Half a year ago, I noticed that if your website is running in iOS in Safari, it is limited to 2 gigs of RAM by the Safari. So you cannot use more than 2 gigs of RAM. And if you work with really huge documents like large resolution, many layers, 2 gigabytes of RAM might not be enough. So actually that's a bit of disadvantage, and I have to wait for Apple to fix it, because that's a limitation. But right. So
that's a limitation of Safari, but not PhotoPea. So if someone is on a Mac, it would behoove them to use Chrome, or for them to use just another browser that will allow the full resources to be made available to PhotoPea, correct?
So I tried some operations. I do some processing on my Android phone and on iPad. So iPad has 8 gigs of RAM, but PhotoPea stopped at 2 gigs of RAM. And my phone has 6 gigs of RAM, and PhotoPea was able to use 5.5 gigs of RAM. So
perfect. Wow.
It's a bit strange. Why is Apple limiting it? But it's the situation we have now. But I hope it will improve eventually, and all browsers will provide web apps with a full computational power.
So let me ask you, is PhotoPea now, I don't know if it was originally, is PhotoPea like a full-time business for you, a full-time job, since you are the one-man show and all the algorithms, all of the changes, all the updates, all of the advanced features and everything you're actually writing the code for? Has this become just a 9-to-5, basically your full-time career?
Yeah, it is now. I've been working on it for 12 years, I guess. And for the last 7 years, I make enough money to survive, and right now even more.
Right. Yeah, because I know. So, matter of fact, that's a good question. Matter of fact, someone asked this question, and it had to do with monetization, right? So, PhotoPea is a free, let's call it Photoshop clone, which it really isn't, but let's just say a Photoshop-esque type of software that is web-based. And that's why I was saying it's kind of like a SaaS, and it's kind of not. The SaaS side of it basically is the side that you allow people to pay a few dollars per month, whatever they want, let's say $5 a month or whatever. And then what will end up happening is the advertisements, those little ads that are sitting on the right-hand side of your screen, those ads will disappear. And then also you provide them with additional means of going backwards in history. So let's say if the history is 5, your history might become 8 or 10 or whatever. So this way you can kind of step back through time a little bit more by paying that small amount, or they could just use it for free. And the thing that I really like is that for free means literally for free. You're not limiting the amount of the tools, or you're not limiting it by, you know, stamping a watermark on the final product or anything like that. It's literally free, but they can pay if they wanted to and basically remove the ads. My question is, or their question was, are you let's say for monetization, is it better for you to get that $5, let's say, whatever it is per month, or is it better, or are the ads ample enough to be able to pay for your, once again, full-time job at this time?
So right now, about 80 to 90% of my income is from ads. There are not that many people paying for the premium account.
Gotcha.
But of course, if somebody pays for the premium, it makes much more money than just watching ads. Well, it depends how much time you spend in PhotoPea with ads, but it's about, I'd say, like 10 times more. So if you use PhotoPea with ads, I'll get like 50 cents in a month.
Right.
But if you pay me $5 for a month of premium, I get $5.
Right, right. And you know what? I encourage people, when there is a developer like you where it's literally a one-man show and it's something that you're going to use all the time, I would encourage people to send over, that small amount, that stipend, that $5. I am definitely the reason why one of the things that we were cutting the cord with Adobe is we didn't want to pay a monthly fee, right? We wanted to buy something outright and then not pay any more. But when you're doing your own thing, you have to somehow supplement all of that work. And as you said, the ads are, 80% of it. 20% being the actual payment that people pay. And I think a lot of that has to do with is they're not really incentivized by you to pay that $5 per month, either by putting watermarks or doing any type of, let's say not so nice things that a lot of other companies do, where you're kind of releasing it for people to use with, the hopes that they'll pay that $5 or whatever per month. But if not, you still get your ad revenue, which is fantastic. What is your base now? Like, how many people are using PhotoPea?
PhotoPea is a website, so it's hard. If somebody opens it, close it, and then opens it again, it's hard to tell if it's the same person.
Right.
As I'm not tracking like IP addresses or anything, but I'm tracking how many times the website is opened in a day, and it's open about 1 million times in a day.
1 million.
So I'd say the unique users maybe like 500,000. So
right.
Somebody opens it twice, 3 times during a day.
Yeah, so you're looking at 500,000. So is it like let's call it 15 million per month, somewhere around there, of actual users somewhere. Let's call it anywhere from 10 to 15 million, depends on that, the math on it. But either which way, that is a lot of people using this software. It really reminds me, or it's kind of akin to Canva. You remember how Canva started as a very small app? Like no one really knew what Canva was. And now Canva is massive. It is a huge business, making just gazillions of dollars, right? Buying out companies like Serif, that's been around forever, which are the creators of Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer and all the rest of them. So it's just amazing how a SaaS product could literally get that way. And I think the reason they did it is very similar to what you did, is they gave it to people and they didn't limit anything, but then they added niceties or features that you can add on if you want to do so. And I think that that's, what you're kind of doing here. And I really like that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. My question, or actually someone else had a question that was just simply if someone like Canva, one of these massive organizations, SaaS organizations, said, listen, Ivan, we have some money here. yeah. Would you like to sell that PhotoPea to us? Is that something that you would even think about? Or is this just like a love that you just enjoy so much and you're making enough money that you don't really have to worry about it? Is that something you would tender? Is it something that you would think about selling it or no?
Well, actually, that's funny. I was actually in touch with some guys from Canva several years ago about acquisition. But actually, I'm not looking to sell it. Like if I sell PhotoPea and I get a lot of money, I still don't know what to do with this money, or like how to invest them, or what should I buy for myself to enjoy the money. And I'm a bit afraid that I would not. It would be hard for me to find something else which I would be excited about. So I'm not pushing too hard on selling PhotoPea. But I guess if somebody offered me some good offer, not just money, but I don't know.
Maybe a position in the company or something like that.
Or maybe convince me that it would be right to work with them and sell them the product. I'm open to it.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, so it is definitely what I'm hearing is it's a love, it's a passion for you. You really enjoy it. It's not something you really want to get rid of anytime soon. You love it, and you can't think of another project that you would like to work on if you were able to get all of this money sitting in the bank. What is the next project? But this is still your baby and you really enjoy doing it, which is really good, because that's what makes good product, right? Good product is from people that absolutely love the product. And anytime you're buying something, you're actually buying the person that is behind the product. You're not really buying the product, right? So people listening to this interview will probably say, that's a really nice guy. He's going to be around for a while, and let's give it a shot. And I think that everyone really, really should. Let me ask you, is there any type of compromises that had to go into this creation, looking at the new, let's say when you look at Photoshop for all of their new tools and everything, is there like compromises that you have to make and say, this tool there's no way for me to do, or this tool is just going to be too intensive on the system or resources, or is there any of that type of thought, or are you able to basically replicate the majority of things that you see out there?
Well, I would say that anybody can replicate anything in theory, but you would either have to study some resources, how it's done, and it could take you never know if it would take you like a week or a year or even 20 years to get to the level where you can replicate or reinvent something. So right. It's all, for me, it's always a matter of time. So if I see that some feature can be really useful, and I think I could create it in a reasonable time, I usually start doing some research how it could be done, or either I know it, right after seeing it, I might know how it's done, more or less, or I have no idea how it's done, but I'm super excited and I have to do some research whether there are some like scientific papers about this kind of algorithms, and right. I have to look around and to see if it's possible. And usually when I'm excited, I usually keep pushing until I figure out how it's done.
Yeah, but it's almost like a challenge, right? It's like a challenge. You have like, you see that there's something that you can do, but you don't know how to get there. And you're like, okay, so let me do a whole bunch of research and see if I can replicate it. It turns almost into a game. You gamify the process of building out this web app. And once again, it's your love for the app, which definitely is what does it for sure. Let me ask you, with all of these different applications that are out there, everything that you see, Photoshop, Affinity, all the rest of this stuff, is there certain things, is there like certain features that you are working on that are not on there, that are not in PhotoPea yet, that you're just excited about, that you're, let's say researching, or at least putting forth effort to create? Like, what's the latest thing?
New features that I'm planning to add in PhotoPea? Right. I usually don't say it out loud. Okay, then I feel like I promised it, I have to make it. Right, I usually prefer to work on it in secret and then present it as a surprise to the users.
Absolutely, I get it. Absolutely, that makes sense to me for sure. So let me just ask you, as far as if people are moving from, let's say, Affinity, because there's a lot of people that are using Affinity Photo these days. If they were, could they take an Affinity file, just like a PSD file, and dump it into PhotoPea, and will it open and render and show you the internals of it?
Yeah, I have added this feature about, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and PhotoPea can open Affinity files, and you would see the layers, the names of the layers, folders, all kinds of features like adjustments, some layer effects. So I think a lot of these features of Affinity files will be converted into PhotoPea, and then you could save it as a PSD file. So actually, even if you don't like PhotoPea, you don't like the interface, you can use it as a simple converter between Affinity and PSD files. So you can work this way. You can work with Affinity files in Adobe Photoshop because you would convert them.
So either which way.
Yeah, but actually this feature is not used that much in PhotoPea. like only about 20,000 Affinity files is open in PhotoPea in a month, which is a really low number compared to some other formats.
So people are just making their own right in PhotoPea. They're not trying to bring in other.
They do bring in, but they bring in like SVG or PDF files, or like Clip Studio, Paint, or Figma files.
Right.
All other programs.
That makes sense. I know, because I was looking at the list of all of these readable files from PhotoPea, and the one that I didn't see was the Affinity Photo one. And I'm like, wow, there's PSD and AI and XD and Sketch and PDF and RAW and all, this whole list I was reading. And I'm like, wow, I wonder that, because I haven't tested it myself. That's why I wanted to ask you. So sure enough, it will bring in those Affinity files too.
PhotoPea can open about 55 formats at the moment. And I think I published only the first 20 or 30.
Yeah, exactly.
Affinity is at the bottom of the list.
Excellent. I know someone asked about that too, is moving, being able to kind of do that. A lot of people, what they do is they'll work, let's say at home or in the office on something, and then they get home on their iPad, they want to open something up and do a little bit of just basic editing. Can they do it? And the answer to that is absolutely can. And I would imagine that certain layers, if there's certain attributes in those layers that are specific to that application, it's just simply not going to render.
Usually when I'm trying to let users open some files from some other software, I'm usually trying to convert each feature inside a file, each object, into something similar in a PSD format. So if there is some like drop shadow behind the layer, I convert it into a layer style of PSD files. And I try to copy the parameters of the drop shadow, like the distance and stuff. So I usually have to manually set up the conversion process from that format. And if something is missing, it doesn't mean it's impossible. It simply means that I have not came across Affinity file which would have this feature. And if you send me that Affinity file, I could look into it and I could improve the extraction of features from Affinity files.
Once again, it's back to all the algorithms that you were writing continuously that are, looking for certain things and then rewriting them, like you're saying. So absolutely. I mean, it's amazing what I see that PhotoPea is able to do. And I do want to say that, and I know we talked about this off air, let's call it off camera, about Linux and the Linux community. There's a lot of people that are moving from Windows to Linux, and they're having a hard time trying to find a photo editor. And GIMP, which some people like, some people don't. You also have like Krita, and there's a lot of other pieces of software that you can get which are open source on Linux. But the thing is it's a big learning curve. It's not easy to learn, number one. Sometimes they don't, they don't work the same as like Photoshop. The one thing that I'd have to say to everyone that I've been using PhotoPea only for the last couple of weeks before we end up having this conversation, this little chat that we're having, for all of my thumbnails. Every single thumbnail that I've been doing on this channel have been all done through PhotoPea, and it works out really well. And I have to say that the means of ripping, and I wanted to ask you one question about this before we go. The means of ripping a foreground from a background, that selection is really good when it comes to PhotoPea in comparison to some of these other tools that are downloaded right to your computer, which I find amazing. That means you're doing a really good job with that algorithm to find not only hard, crispy, contrasty edges, but you're trying to have to find those soft edges and now think about what needs to be tapered back and kind of mushed together, especially when we're talking about hair, selecting hair or fur on a dog or something like that. Very difficult. That is a difficult task. How does, I've noticed it's done a pretty good job. Is that something that you were constantly working on to get better and better and better? Because I know there's tools out there that are just specifically for ripping foregrounds from backgrounds. Is that something that you concentrate on, or is it kind of how it is how it is as of right now? Or
yeah, I'd say there are many ways to remove the background from a photo. Did you use the remove background button, which works with one click? Was that the case?
No, I use the one that you paint over, like an area.
I think that's called Magic Cut, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it has like a paintbrush basically, and you can kind of paint around, and then you can hit just like you would on Photoshop. You can paint over the subject, and then if it goes and selects further out from the subject, you can hit Alt, I believe it is, and then continue to paint to reduce the selection. That's what I was using, at least. I didn't try like the one-click rip type of thing.
Yeah, I think that works quite well. So this is called Magic Cut. So you can select, you can remove the background in a couple of seconds, pretty much. So yeah, it's quite a popular feature. I spent like maybe it took me like a month to make it, and then once in a month I was improving some detail in this method. So I think over the years it works quite well now.
Gotcha. So as far as like selecting hair or selecting fur or something like that, what is the best method through PhotoPea? Which is the best tool? I think there's 3 selection tools, I believe, in PhotoPea, right?
Yeah, you can use either this Magic Cut, or you can use some like magnetic lasso, the original selection tool, when you just draw around the contours of the foreground. Or you can use the select menu and then press remove BG, which removes the background with AI. And I think this does the best job, like out of all methods. It's just one click for you, and it uses the advanced AI, like Stable Diffusion algorithms. It's done in a cloud on a server, and it removes the background very well. And I think it's the best method for removing backgrounds. And
that's a single click, basically. It's a single click removal. Do you highlight what you consider the foreground, or it just figures it out all by itself?
No, it just figures it out, and in 99% of cases, it's usually what you want. And it removes it does this removal as a layer mask. So it does not erase anything. It just adds a mask. And if you think,
you can dial it in.
Yeah, you see that it removed a person in the background, but you wanted it to be in the photo, you can just paint over the mask
over it, basically, right?
Get the person back in the photo.
That's perfect. That's amazing. We're definitely have to try that, and maybe I'll demo it for people, because that's pretty cool. That's some of the things that we use all the time for doing thumbnails. We're like kind of ripping things out of here, ripping things out of here, and then putting together almost like a collage, right? A composite of different images to form some type of thumbnail. So yeah, it's very, very important. And I could tell a lot of the people that are in the Linux community, they have a hard time when it comes to ripping foregrounds from backgrounds, because the tools are just, they're non-intuitive. Some of the stuff is just absolutely horrendous. Some people like, for example, like GIMP, and GIMP to me is just, it feels like 1995, like literally Windows 95, 98. That's just the UI behind it just doesn't feel good. Whereas with yours, with PhotoPea, in comparison to GIMP, I mean, it's literally night and day. Like yours feels very much so like a modern UI, a modern, graphical user interface, a GUI. It feels like that in comparison to GIMP, which does not at all.
The first version of PhotoPea looked like a program from 95, like all the simple sliders, but then gradually users asked me, hey, Ivan, could you change maybe this button, and could you add a border between the panel, and could you add some like styles? And actually, I think my users encouraged me to turn it into what it looks now. A week ago, I modified the PhotoPea website. If you open it for the first time in your life, you will not see the editor. You will see some general description, and you can try it right now and see. And I wrote down all the important features what PhotoPea can do. So, and then you press the button, use the editor, and then the editor appears in front of you. So if you are already using PhotoPea, you can open PhotoPea in incognito mode, and you will see all the features that are there. So maybe if you've been using PhotoPea for 5 years and you are not aware of the latest features, you can open PhotoPea in incognito and read the list of of all the important features that are there. And you can also follow PhotoPea on Facebook or Twitter. Yeah, I usually write some news about new features on social media.
So your social media platform of choice that you use the most, which would be what, X, Facebook?
I think X, Twitter, I usually use, but the same content is usually copied to Facebook, so you can use it on Facebook.
Either which way. Do you have a Discord that you've put together, or no?
I never used Discord myself, but somebody created Discord and then Discord channel, and they made me an admin. But I rarely use it. So there's a community of people discussing PhotoPea on Discord, but I rarely go there and read it.
Right. You'll stick with.
I think it's
stick with X and
Discord. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, listen, thank you so much, Ivan. Really do appreciate you being here. I know there's going to be a lot of people that will jump on this and give it a shot. There's no reason not to, especially if you're just trying to break free of Adobe or whatnot, or if you're a Linux user and you want to use something that just is in the cloud and it just simply works and it's agnostic. It doesn't matter what platform you're on. You could be on an iPad, you could be on your PC or Linux or whatever. So it's really great to be able to do it and do it in different places, different locations, and pick up where you left off, which I really love. You can work, like I said, I'm in the studio, and then later on I can go back home and then do a finalization on a thumbnail literally on my iPad, which is amazing to me. Absolutely amazing. So once again, thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate it. And if folks have any other questions down below in the comment area, please stick those comments, those questions down there, and hopefully Ivan can kind of frequent this video a little bit, and if there's any questions, he can kind of answer it for you. That would be awesome if he does have time to do it, because we know he's busy putting together more advanced features. So once again, thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to chat with you, and I'll try to get to the video, to comments, and maybe respond to some viewers.
Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.